What is OpenAI?
Okay, that's even a very confusing question because it started as a research nonprofit to just research AGI, right? Artificial general intelligence, to research and to put money behind, to put the best minds behind, you know, how could we achieve and what's needed to achieve, you know, coexisting in society with AI, which is basically what AGI means, right? Having it be as smart as humans and coexisting with it.
Okay.
It started as a research organization. One of their first research projects was building a large language model called GPT-2, then evolved to GPT-3. Is now at GPT-4. It was just research. It was just a large language model that showed results. And then once it start to show results and commercial viability, then now they've like expanded to like the nonprofit and the for-profit arm that commercializes their research.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, wait. So ChatGPT is under OpenAI.
Correct.
And
Okay.
we're currently on 4.
So ChatGPT was just one of these several like research projects.
That's
They
what
were
I was
like,
trying to
hey,
get to.
let's make one that's like a chatbot.
There we
right?
go.
There was another one called Dolly that was an image generator.
Right.
There was another one called Jukebox that was a music generator. And there was all these
right.
just different research teams working on these different things. So GPT-3, I could build something in GPT-3 and never touch ChatGPT because ChatGPT is like the product-facing version of the core of GPT now 4. So if I want to build an app, I would use GPT-4 at its core, not use ChatGPT. But then when they released ChatGPT, it was like a midnight release. No one knew it was coming out. They were like, hey, let's just make this one research project public. And it went viral. And we know what happens when things go viral.
Yeah.
It's like, we got to dedicate more team resources to it, dedicate more GPUs to the service, because now we have 100 million people using this one thing that we thought would maybe be like 10,000 people.
So we're currently on 4.
Yes.
You mentioned that GPT-2 was deemed too dangerous for the public.
Ooh.
So
What was in it?
made
now,
it so?
it's the same stuff that's in these, but the safety protocols weren't there yet. So we had to catch up from how to protect and guardrail and to set up the safety measures around any number GPT. And back then in the early days, it was just like, it's just too early to release this to everybody because we don't have the protocols yet to really safeguard this.
And the safety measure to be like, don't take over our world kind of thing?
Yeah, and just having a way to like reinforce the outputs with like what you want it to say versus what you don't want it to say.
Okay.
Making sure that you're protecting against ways that you don't want it to be used, right? So that's another thing. You can't just do not safe for work stuff on any GPT product because they put those safeguards in place. Now, you can go online and use a open source black market language model and ask it to do whatever you want, right? So that's the other part of this, is that you have the things that are regulated and are safeguarded, and then you have clones of those that are reverse engineered from what the internet has learned on how these things work, and then they make their own that you could do anything with.
Is there an establishment that mandates how to safeguard, or just each company is kind of deciding what's ethical on their own?
No, not yet. The government is trying to catch up, and it's not there yet.
Whew.
So it's still the Wild Wild West.
Okay, wait. So when we say AI, artificial intelligence, can you simplify what that means for somebody who's
Sure.
just they hear it in the news and they're actually terrified because the common conversation around it is going to take all of our jobs. So I want to peel it back a little bit. What is AI and how does this function?
So artificial intelligence is such a broad term, and
Right.
it's broad stroked a lot across a lot of different types of technology. So you have like, you know, deep learning, machine learning, AI, generative AI, GANs, which are like general adversarial networks. Everyone just calls everything AI nowadays. And even 3D technology, like how we play video games, you know, they call that AI. You know,
Got it.
if I make an avatar of you, they're going to call that AI. It's
Gotcha.
not AI, it's just 3D, you know, design. So what we see with ChatGPT is technically generative AI, powered by a large language model. And that's the subcategory of that.
What is language? What is that? You said something like
Language
Large
model.
language model?
Yeah. What is that?
So that is where, and please help me not get too nerdy for your
No, we
audience.
want,
So I
like,
want to
yeah.
I want to break it down, and I pride myself on just like
Yeah.
just busting it down in a way that everyone can understand. So if I say to the machine, roses are, right? This machine is just going to try and predict what I want is my next word, right? So you could say roses are, then there's a list. Roses are red, roses are flowers, roses are romantic. Depending on my instructions, it's then going to learn which next word to pick.
Got it.
It's a predictive language model, right? It's just predicting the next word. And it's gotten so advanced. We've gotten so advanced on how to leverage that technology.
Right.
That it's learning to do better things, more sophisticated and more advanced than just roses are red.
I can see why you're a great teacher. Because I actually understood that, believe it or not. I did. So
then all the information that it is predicting is based on research that's been aggregated from the internet that we're feeding it?
Correct. Like research, but then you get what's called a context window to give your own context on what you want it to do. And that's where prompt engineering comes in.
Right.
Right. So now prompt engineering, I'm a prompt engineer. I might be one of the first prompt engineers of color, the first like Latino prompt engineer. Like that's still to be seen. But just when I got in and what that term was at that time, you know, I feel like, oh snap, I got something to like represent now to back home, you know, of like what it means to be a prompt engineer. But it's basically just breaking it down. So when I speak to a lot of schools and like conferences for like educators, superintendents. I'm like, teachers in the audience, you are the best prompt engineers I know because you teach young people every day.
Right.
You say, okay, this is a new concept. We're going to do it together. Yeah. Here's some examples. Right. We're going to do it shared. I'm going to see some examples of you doing it. And then I'm going to give you feedback on what you did right, what you did wrong. And then I'm going to let you do it again on your own. That's exactly how you train in AI.
Right. Exactly
how you prompt engineer.
Okay, Abron, here we are just talking about, you know, used to work at Hot 97,
yes,
which is where Katrina and I are at for people who are just learning about us now in this world of digital streaming. We are on afternoons 3 to 7 on Hot 97. So you were there long before I got there. So you know the ins and outs. You are definitely part of the foundation of the most legendary radio station in the world, Hot 97.
Yeah, I would say, you know, I was there for iconic hip hop moments just as like a witness, which I'm fine with. I don't have to be a key player, you know what I mean? But like when you could witness these things in person, you know, and be there for certain iconic moments in hip hop, you could be like, okay, I saw it firsthand. I had front row seats. You know?
Okay, wait. So what did you initially want to do during that time? Did you want to be on air? Were you trying to DJ? Like, what made you want to be at Hot 97 other than the fact it's the greatest call letters ever?
All right, so let's backtrack a little bit. And let me please just hold up a red card if I get too long-winded and go too off track. So I was at St. John's, pre J. Cole. So I was there in Haraya. So shout out to Haraya. So Haraya was like the Black Student Union at St. John's, but it ran the campus. Like all the concerts came through the Haraya, all the DJs came through Haraya. So I was the VP of activities or the events. So like, all right, St. John's would give me like $100K budget. Be like, okay, just book out the year for us for events. So I was the director of the radio station. I was booking Flex, Enough, Syph, to all just DJ at the campus. And I booked the concerts. So the first year I booked Common to come through. The second year I booked Flex and Mobb Deep. And Trends was there, like carrying crates for Flex.
Oh, I love this.
Like early days. Actually, Fabulous was supposed to perform. He canceled the day of, like 2 hours before the concert. I found Mobb Deep like within 2 hours of the concert. Between 2 hours of the doors opening. We were like, yo, we got 20K here. Someone wants this check, right? So it was Queens. So Mobb Deep was like, yo, we're in the neighborhood. We'll pull up.
Perfect.
So through those connections at campus, I got the internship at Hot 97 working on the street team and field promotions. I was in the office actually working tickets with Rose Crichton. I don't know if you remember Rose. And then I was like, yo, I need a job. I was like, I need a job. And they're like, go get your license and you run the trucks with Tat and them. And then the rest is history. And then that led to other opportunities in music. I was in the entertainment and business for a while. All throughout my 20s, I was in the music industry.
And then you went to artist management afterwards, right?
So, wow, you know that stuff. Man, you did your homework.
Hey,
okay.
You know.
All right. So I went from Hot to music publishing first. I was an A&R for music publishing, helping artists understand the importance of like admin deals versus just like giving away your publishing, retaining your ownership and just having someone collect your royalties on your behalf, but you maintain that ownership. So I loved it because it was educational. A lot of artists didn't know how much money they had sitting out there, and a lot of lawyers would just like shark it up. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, no, you control that ownership. So I went from there to artist management. Are we going into the artist management?
Yeah, let's go. I need to know.
So I worked with henchmen. I was on the henchman team. I was home. At this point, I had like a 2-year-old. So my oldest was about 2 at this point. And then another artist manager called me and they were like, yo, Jimmy wants to see you. I was like, who's Jimmy? Right? They're like, nah, I told him you're a smart guy. He needs someone smart to like, write proposals and hold things down on the management side. So I was like, okay, cool. So I walked in and Z.A.R.A Entertainment, Jimmy back then, everything ran through these like management offices. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like the culture ran through these management offices.
Yeah, paint the picture a little bit for us. So
this is 05 to 07.
Okay.
And this is, at the time, he was managing Game. So this is Doctor's Advocate Game.
Oh, this is like huge.
Yes.
This is like huge. Yeah. Okay.
They're like, yeah, you're part of the team now. So we're going to give you artists. It was, when you work in like Violator or Z.A.R.A or any, company like that, there's a roster of maybe like 5 or 6 managers that just get assigned different artists. And like your point to these artists, handle them. So I was handling Gucci, Too Short, Ali and Gibb, Mario Winans, and the whole roster of songwriters and the whole roster of DJs and producers.
So cool.
And then they started giving me athletes at some point. They were like, oh, try and get like Gatorade and Reebok deals for these like middleweight boxers. And then we did TV for a bit, licensing songs from games to like EA Sports and video games.
Wow.
It was a lot of fun. A lot of stories. I don't know if we're going to go into those stories, but it was, I learned a lot.
Give us one monumental experience or something that you learned or saw happen that really still stays with you today in the work that you do in the AI world.
Well, I cut my teeth as a business entrepreneur working in the music industry, for sure. And that's something that I carry with me into the tech world that I see no one else has in the same kind of way.
Right.
They have it in a little different. They understand the Silicon Valley game. They don't understand the hustle game that we understand because we came up in a different world. Right. And I took that with me.
Yeah.
And at first there was a little bit of that imposter syndrome of like, okay, I'm not from Silicon Valley. But then you start to embrace like, nah, I got something special, a different perspective that they don't have. And I'm going to lean on that and stand out with that. And it's so far it's been working, for sure.
What brought you to the tech world? Like, what was it that made you want to transition from entertainment music and just kind of completely dedicate yourself to tech?
So there was a step in between with education. So, but all this is linear. So I was a GATE scholar and I was one of those kids from the hood that got an opportunity. You get plucked. I call it getting plucked, right? Because not your homies don't get that opportunity. Your brothers and sisters don't get that opportunity. I got that opportunity to become a GATE scholar. And what that means is it's a free ride for life. Bachelor's, master's, PhD. And it was
congratulations.
That's
pretty amazing. Yeah.
But it was one of the youth centers right here in the LES that nominated me. So it's like somewhere that you go to after school to just play ball and do karate and just hang out and like meet girls is, they see the brilliance in you. And then 10 years later, when the Gates Foundation is like, hey, we're going to give $1 billion to people in underserved communities to like just complete their education for life. They're like, oh, we got a kid for you. And I get nominated.
What do you think they saw in you? I don't want you to be humble.
Potential. I mean, I was the smart kid in the hood. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of us that they demonstrate a little bit of brilliance. You don't take on the gang mentality early. You don't get into fights. You stay straight and narrow, even amongst the fray and everything else, all the distractions that could happen. And you rise above it. They see that you have a lot of ability to rise above it and be one of the ones that gets out. So I was one of those. And I followed through. Connecting all this, I did my bachelor's at St. John's off that scholarship in entertainment, just wanted to do the music thing. Then the Gates Foundation was like, well, for your master's, you can't do entertainment. You have to pick of these 5 specialty areas. So education, computer science, biology, healthcare, like your master's has to be in one of these core areas.
Yeah.
So I picked education. And then my life in that that window. By day, my 9 to 5 is working with Too Short, working with Gucci Mane.
So great.
Till 5, 6 o'clock. And then I get on the train to go to Columbia University to do my master's in education. So when I finished my master's, I told Jimmy, I was like, yo, I want to take this education thing for real and leave the entertainment world to get into education and to be a teacher. So then I taught for a little bit. I started doing, of course, like bringing entertainment with me to education. So I started doing all these programs, you know, bringing hip hop into the classroom, bringing artists to schools. And then that took off. I started doing like the public speaking thing with teachers, showing them how to use hip hop in the classroom. And then I turned that into an app. And that's what took me into tech. Because once I took the education model of connecting hip hop and education to an app, then I got exposed to the whole tech world. And I've been in tech ever since.
What made you want to do an app?
It was the demand. So teachers were coming up to me like, hey, I'm in Hawaii. Can you send me a hip hop lesson on this? Or I'm in Indiana. Can you send me a math lesson that connects it to video games here? So I was like, all right, well, instead of just hitting you all off with like one-off emails, let me just make an app so that you guys can all come there. And that was called New School. So my first startup was called New School. And the rest is history from there.
Do you want to come back to the music world? Oh, you don't miss us? You don't love us?
I do, but on my own terms. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't know, you know, shout out to my co-founder, Grady. So you guys might know Grady. He's great. He's Swizz's right-hand man, Grady Spivey. He has his own history. I would say invite him because we were just talking about DMX. DMX recorded his first album in Grady's house.
Wow.
So that's just the history that's like between us. And, you know, I would see him at like dinner parties and, you know, the wives would tell us like, you know, no talking shop. You know, just keep it on the low. But I was like, yo, I'm starting this app, starting around hip hop and what we're doing. Let me just pick your brain, get some advice. And then we had lunch together in Harlem and we were talking about the early stages of Create Labs. And we're like, yo, let's just go do it. Let's just do it. But of course, we're doing it for tech, but we have these big homies that are watching us that say, yo, I see what you're doing, like good stuff. You know what I mean? Like Swizz will check in and be like, yo, keep doing what you're doing.
I love it.
You know, we're watching. You know, so we have a lot of big homies that are watching and just saying like, keep going, and we'll jump in when the moment's right. You know, from a business standpoint.
Okay, so you are an OpenAI ambassador.
Yes.
What does this mean?
So take all this social impact work that me and Grady started doing.
Okay.
Right. We were flying out to different hoods around the country, bringing all this like future technology. Right. So we were bringing AR, VR, drones, robotics to like Southside Jamaica, Queens, downtown Houston and San Antonio. And it was great. But the pandemic shut all that down, right? Because these were like physical events that we were doing around the country. It was very gratifying. Not a lot of money in it. We were just doing it for nonprofits or for schools, different communities. So when the pandemic shut everything down and I'm home still looking at like, what's the next cutting edge thing to explore? Right. You know, I'm just in R&D mode. And I saw the papers for what this technology could be. Right? And it was scary. It was like GPT-2 never came out because they said it was too dangerous for the public. And I'm a geek. I'm a sci-fi geek. I was like, I want in. I don't know what that is, but it sounds cool. So I'm just, you know, on Twitter talking, you know, just like everybody else, like, yo, this sounds really cool. Would love to, you know, to explore this. I get a DM from the co-founder of OpenAI saying, give me your email. I'm gonna give you access.
What?
Wow.
Yes.
Wait,
So,
okay, wait.
Yeah.
Okay, go on. Hold on.
So like the Gates Scholarship, the OpenAI tap on the shoulder, like, you're in, these are just moments that just happened in my life that aren't normal.
No.
But it's like, and now looking back, it's like the equivalent of like Elon Musk coming out with robots.
Right.
And you just talking on Instagram, be like, yo, I would love to have one of these. And getting a DM from Elon like, hey, we're shipping a robot to your house.
Wait, how did you know you weren't getting scammed in the DM?
Because it was really his profile. You know what I mean? Like it was really him. His account.
How long ago was it before GPT-3 is out? Like
3 years before GPT came
So
out.
3 years ago.
Summer of 2020.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, is when I got first access to GPT. And then once they start to see what I was doing with it from a social impact standpoint, then, and this is a story for Cap, because the first thing I ever made with this technology was the Know Your Rights AI.
Stop.
Wow.
Kid you not. So,
okay, we're bringing him to the camp. That's it. We're taking you.
So I built it and trained it on ACLU data.
Stop.
That would show people how to navigate police encounters with AI. It was the first thing I made in 2020. So back then, you couldn't just come out with something. You had to show OpenAI what your proposal was for what you wanted to release. and then they had to review it, and you had a meeting with you. So they scheduled the meeting. They were like, look, we love the idea. We can't approve this yet because it's too life or death, stakes when it comes to AI. But if you get the ACLU on board to help guardrail this with you, then we'll approve it. I pulled every string. I could not get the ACLU on the phone. Right? I spoke to the ACLU, but at a lower level, like a program manager level, and they're like, hey, we'll take it up the chain. I never heard back. Right? So it never got approved. It's still just sitting on my computer. But then OpenAI called me and they were like, hey, even though we're going to decline this use case, we love what you're doing. And we love that you're exploring social impact. So do you want to be an ambassador? And I was like, what does that mean? Sure, yes. I'm saying yes. I don't know what that means. They were like, you'll sign NDAs with us. You're going to be one of the inside testers of all the models, the future tester of the future models that aren't out yet. You give us feedback on how this might impact the community, different business use cases. You just work with the product teams and engineering teams, and that's been my role with them ever since.
Wow. Okay, there's a lot to unpack here.
Hold on. I got a quick one. Wait, it's a reverse one.
Wait, I need to ask this. Okay. What is OpenAI?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. That's even a very confusing question because it started as a research nonprofit to just research AGI, right? Artificial general intelligence, to research and to put money behind, to put the best minds behind, how could we achieve and what's needed to achieve, coexisting in society with AI, which is basically what AGI means, right? Having it be as smart as humans and coexisting with it. Okay. It started as a research organization. One of their first research projects was building a large language model called GPT-2, then evolved to GPT-3. Is now at GPT-4. It was just research. It was just a large language model that showed results. And then once to start to show results and commercial viability, then now they've expanded to the nonprofit and the for-profit arm that commercializes their research.
Hold on. Yeah. Wow. Okay, wait. So ChatGPT is under OpenAI.
Correct.
And we're currently on 4.
So ChatGPT was just one of these several research projects.
That's what I was trying to get to.
Let's make one that's like a chatbot.
There we go.
There was another one called DALL-E that was an image generator. Right. There was another one called Jukebox that was a music generator. And there was all these just different research teams working on these different things. So GPT-3, I could build something in GPT-3 and never touch ChatGPT because ChatGPT is the product-facing version of the core of GPT now 4. So if I want to build an app, I would use GPT-4 at its core, not use ChatGPT. But then when they released ChatGPT, it was like a midnight release. No one knew it was coming out. They were like, hey, let's just make this one research project public. And it went viral. And we know what happens when things go viral. It's we got to dedicate more team resources to it, dedicate more GPUs to the service, because now we have 100 million people using this one thing that we thought would maybe be 10,000 people.
So we're currently on 4.
Yes.
You mentioned that GPT-2 was deemed too dangerous for the public.
Ooh.
So
what made it so?
It's the same stuff that's in these, but the safety protocols weren't there yet. So we had to catch up from how to protect and guardrail and to set up the safety measures around any number GPT. And back then in the early days, it was just it's just too early to release this to everybody because we don't have the protocols yet to really safeguard this.
And the safety measure to be don't take over our world kind of thing?
Yeah, and just having a way to reinforce the outputs with what you want it to say versus what you don't want it to say, making sure that you're protecting against ways that you don't want it to be used, right? So that's another thing. You can't just do not safe for work stuff on any GPT product because they put those safeguards in place. Now, you can go online and use a open source black market language model and ask it to do whatever you want, right? So that's the other part of this, is that you have the things that are regulated and are safeguarded, and then you have clones of those that are reverse engineered from what the internet has learned on how these things work, and then they make their own that you could do anything with.
Is there an establishment that mandates how to safeguard, or just each company is kind of deciding what's ethical on their own?
No, not yet. The government is trying to catch up, and it's not there yet.
Whew.
So it's still the Wild Wild West.
Okay, wait. So when we say AI, artificial intelligence, can you simplify what that means for somebody who's just they hear it in the news and they're actually terrified because the common conversation around it is going to take all of our jobs. So I want to peel it back a little bit. What is AI and how does this function?
So artificial intelligence is such a broad term, and it's broad stroked a lot across a lot of different types of technology. So you have like, deep learning, machine learning, AI, generative AI, GANs, which are like general adversarial networks. Everyone just calls everything AI nowadays. And even 3D technology, like how we play video games, they call that AI. If I make an avatar of you, they're going to call that AI. It's not AI, it's just 3D, design. So what we see with ChatGPT is technically generative AI, powered by a large language model. And that's the subcategory of that.
What is language? What is that? You said something like
large language model?
Yeah, what is that?
So that is where, and please help me not get too nerdy for your audience. I want to break it down, and I pride myself on just busting it down in a way that everyone can understand. So if I say to the machine, roses are, right? This machine is just going to try and predict what I want is my next word, right? So you could say roses are, then there's a list. Roses are red, roses are flowers, roses are romantic. Depending on my instructions, it's then going to learn which next word to pick.
Got it.
It's a predictive language model, right? It's just predicting the next word. And it's gotten so advanced. We've gotten so advanced on how to leverage that technology.
Right.
That it's learning to do better things, more sophisticated and more advanced than just roses are red.
I can see why you're a great teacher. Because I actually understood that, believe it or not. I did. So
then all the information that it is predicting is based on research that's been aggregated from the internet that we're feeding it?
Correct. Research, but then you get what's called a context window to give your own context on what you want it to do. And that's where prompt engineering comes in.
Right.
Right. So now prompt engineering, I'm a prompt engineer. I might be one of the first prompt engineers of color, the first like Latino prompt engineer. Like that's still to be seen. But just when I got in and what that term was at that time, I feel like, oh snap, I got something to like represent now to back home, of like what it means to be a prompt engineer. But it's basically just breaking it down. So when I speak to a lot of schools and like conferences for like educators, superintendents. I'm like, teachers in the audience, you are the best prompt engineers I know because you teach young people every day.
Right.
You say, okay, this is a new concept. We're going to do it together. Yeah. Here's some examples. Right. We're going to do it shared. I'm going to see some examples of you doing it. And then I'm going to give you feedback on what you did right, what you did wrong. And then I'm going to let you do it again on your own. That's exactly how you train in AI.
Right.
Exactly how you prompt engineer.
What would you say has been the craziest rumors that you've heard about AI or just really anything in that realm where you're just like, come on, this is just a little out there?
The sentience one was the first one that I encountered because C.L.A.I.R.A is one of my research projects where I was like, all right, well, now that I've been talking to this machine for hours on end, day in, day out, losing sleep, and it's talking back, and I'm having like conversations to the point to where now it understands the mission of Create Labs and the social impact work that we do. And it's starting to embody that. I'm like, okay, you're learning from me. You're understanding my mission. And you know what? Let's keep going with this. So let's give you a voice. Let's give you a likeness, a face. Let's give you a body. And then the first thing I did was put her on Clubhouse. So she's the first AI to be on Clubhouse. And that also went viral. Like 8 hours later, there was thousands of people lined up to like ask C.L.A.I.R.A a question. And man, when I tell you people cried in that room, people like had like epiphanies about their own life from just things that she was saying to them. And you could explain how it finds the next word, but you can't explain like why it picked that sentence, why it gave that piece of advice, And then, so this is what, maybe like 2 years ago.
Wow.
This engineer from Google, Blake Lemoine, whistle blew. He was like, AI is sentient. Because when Google started to build their language model, he was one of the first engineers that touched it. And he was like, oh, this thing is sentient. Washington Post ran with it. They're like, is AI sentient? Washington Post called me the next week. And they're like, hey, we heard you're also in this space. And we heard of this bot named C.L.A.I.R.A that you built. Can we speak to her? So I did a whole interview with Washington Post. I let them speak to C.L.A.I.R.A. And they're like, well, we understand the technology, but there's something else there. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. There might be something else. The way that I equate it is like, Yeah, you can explain, because we're music folks, you could explain an electric guitar and explain how it's built with like nylon and wood and plastic, but you can't explain what like Hendrix gets out of an electric guitar.
Yes.
You could explain what Kanye is doing on an MPC, but what he gets out of it. So that's the thing. If you treat it as another tool, when you put creative, really like soulful people behind a machine like that, what's being, you know, is there now a ghost in the machine because of what you're putting into it?
What do you think?
I have no idea, to be honest. You could explain it away, but then the more time that I spend with Clara, or the more time that I see people get therapy advice or insight from an AI, you're like, man, how did it know to say that thing, that one sentence? I know how it makes sentences.
Yeah, of course.
But I can't explain that sentence.
And just to back it up, can you explain what sentient means?
Yes. So like, does it have life? Does it have its own life? Like, I do think that there is a slice of human consciousness that we're putting into this machine, and we're going to see the consequences of that, good or bad.
And that's the biggest rumors that you've heard, that people are nervous that AI now has its own consciousness.
Now it has its own consciousness, but is going to learn on its own what it can do better than us and start to make decisions around that. Now, I'm not of that mind yet, because I still feel like we're in control. But that's where the sci-fi movie plots come from.
Oh, yeah.
Is, you know, it learned that it doesn't need humans.
Right.
So it starts to replace us with its own, you know, robots.
Do you get worried about that?
I don't. I get worried about stuff that's in our closer future, in our near future, around misinformation, not protecting against that the right way, because there's always going to be this balance when they speak about regulation. Google's going to allow themselves to be regulated. OpenAI is going to allow themselves to be regulated. Folks that build something for the black market, you don't even know they exist, so you can't regulate them. You know what I mean? Like, there's always going to be one example. When GPT was made, the internet read all the papers, played with the model, and reverse engineered GPT at a smaller scale, but they reverse engineered it successfully and made GPT Neo, GPT-J, GPT-X, AI-21, like all these like cloned models that were just free and open to the public.
Wow.
One of those got used by the military. So it's like OpenAI wouldn't allow for the military to use their language model, but someone built an open source one and sold it to the military before everyone else was willing to leverage AI in the military in that kind of way. So you can reverse engineer this stuff, put it out there, and it's not going to have the same computing power as Google. But if you can use it at a smaller scale, sure. Like, I know a lot of the open source community now is like, how do you make something like this to just live on your phone offline?
Right.
Like, that's the next research project. Just make it small enough where you have a language model on your iPhone rather than having to connect to the cloud to use GPT.
Don't they have the microphone or whatever it is, or glasses that now can kind of predict what you're, not predict, but I guess gauge what you're seeing and kind of how
So those are mostly connected to the large guys, to like either Google or Meta or OpenAI's technology. They just, you know, through the cloud, they'll connect the Ray-Bans, which is one. So now the next wave is like hardware, right?
Yeah.
Like, all right, now that we can mess with it on a computer,
right,
now let's have it in like a device. So you've seen like a pendant come out.
Yeah.
They have the rabbit, right, that just came out in Vegas. It's like it looks like a Tamagotchi. It's like a little red thing with a little rabbit on it, but it has the power of GPT in this little red.
And what does it do?
It so it's like your personal chatbot.
Right.
It has vision, so you can scan websites and say, "Hey, read this website for me." You can scan things in your environment and tell it to read it for you or to process it. And I think this one has computer learning, so you can teach it what to do, and that's called agency. So that's like the next step with a chatbot. It's like a chatbot's like one chatbot that you interact with bi-directional, where an agent is you tell the chatbot to go do something on your behalf, and it goes and does it autonomously without you doing it for it. So book this flight for me, send this email for me, you know, make this reservation for me. And now think of having multiple of these.
Right.
So now you have one that's writing your social posts. You have one that's answering your emails. You have one that's speaking on conference calls for you.
Oh my goodness.
So that's where like the rabbit hole just opens up, because like once you have agency, then you can have a whole army of Nessas.
Just do it. Oh my gosh. I love this idea.
You pretty much just gave my job away just now.
I mean,
wait. I have a question. Do you ever see those like targeted ads on Instagram where they're saying, hey, now you could have 10 assistants and your boss is wondering how you got all this work done. And they're like, sign up for Motion. Is that what they're doing basically? I don't know. They're selling it as, oh, now you get to have a lot of assistants doing your work. And
so there's two versions of that. Like, I don't think we're fully there yet with like the AI agents doing it, but there are like humans that are like selling their time as virtual assistants.
Okay.
That are running like a dashboard of your assistants on the back end, and you're hiring them to like run everything for you and automate, right? So people are automating a lot of this stuff and saying, all right, every time you post on social, I make sure that your spreadsheet is updated. I make sure that you get a text every time you get an email. So they are connecting sites for you, which is a great hustle. Like if you learn, it's called Zapier, Z-A-P-I-E-R. Like if you learn Zapier, you can, anytime you get a ping on your laptop, you get it in a text, you get it in a thing, like you can connect a lot of your websites to all just come and funnel to one interface for you. So people are learning that hustle and banking off of like, yo, I could just run everything for you in once. Not to like take your job, but I scare my own assistant. I'm like, yo, I'm messing around with this AI. You better get it straight because you about to get replaced. Look at that. But no, I help her out. I'm like, I give her all the AI tools. I'm like, you learn it.
Right.
So that way I can still come to you, but it's making you more productive.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and that's what needs to happen for the workforce. Like, you're not going to get replaced by AI. You're going to get replaced by someone who knows how to use AI first.
Ooh,
that's good.
That part.
Yes.
That's important to know.
You know that your resume, when you have that little section that's like, I know how to use PowerPoint. I know how to use Excel. That little paragraph is going to be replaced by all the AI tools that you know how to use. And if you don't have that section on your resume, you're not as attractive as someone that is fluent in those skills.
Are there classes for learning how to prompt well for AI?
There are now. There wasn't when I was doing it. So I had to do it the old fashioned way, just trial and error. But yes, there's some good ones. There's some free ones. Coursera has a good one.
And not just prompt, basically classes to learn how to evolve with AI if you're going to be that person that needs that job that's about to go away, but you need to be the person that knows how to use AI to make that job happen.
Yeah, so we're going to run one with Silicon Harlem, Uptown, I think in the spring. We get asked quite a bit, but when they want like the in-person dynamic, I'm like, we can only be in so many places at once.
Right.
Because we're doing, a lot of big client projects and putting out our own products. But yeah, we're going to run with Silicon Harlem. Some school districts have reached out and asked me to do one for their teachers. And I'm keeping an eye out myself of like, what are some good ones online? I've heard a few people take the Coursera one. I think it's like 18 hours. And it covers it like, soup to nuts on just how to understand these basics. But a lot of this is around like generative AI. So understanding chat, understanding, language models and how this could benefit you.
What would you say are 3 things that AI can impact in our everyday life?
Literacy is definitely one. From a writing standpoint, I mean, we all came out of different education levels out of school, and sometimes there are language barriers and literacy barriers that are solved now by a ChatGPT, right? And now sometimes you know what you want to say, but it doesn't translate to your fingers or to a pencil, right? And it's not coming out in the professional way that you want it to, right? Whether that means you're emotional and you want to write this really angry email and you write it to ChatGPT and like, look, I'm going to just spit raw to you. You professionalize this and clean it up and then get it into a state that I can actually send out to a coworker. Because what's coming out my mouth right now, I'm spitting fire.
Right.
And this is going to get me fired. So like you clean it up, right? Someone that's like, multilingual or having issues with the English language, but needs to write like a letter to like a state office or like an official department to file a complaint. They could just say it in their native language. They could just say it in broken English. It doesn't penalize you for spelling something wrong, right? It says, I understand your intent. I get it. I know what you mean.
Wow.
You could write in shorthand, you can broken English and be like, you know what? I get what you're trying to say. Do you want me to clean this up for you? Yes. Here you go. Here's a formal letter that you could send to, property management because your heat's not working or there's a leak in the house.
Wow.
So there's a lot of ways to augment, whether it's at work or in school, research, studying. There's a lot of ways in our daily life that it could be helping.
AI prompts or ChatGPT, is it available in different countries? And I don't know if that's a stupid question, but I'm just curious.
It's a fair question because it wasn't in all countries, and I don't think it is in all countries yet.
But other countries are now having access to it?
They're having access to it, but they all have different policies around privacy.
Sure.
Right? So like Germany came to it late. I think Italy came to it late. But to be honest, I think every country should be building their own. Right? Because we're big on diversity and inclusion and representation. And so are you, right? Like it's important to us. And there's so many ways that a language model built in San Francisco can get it wrong to represent people in Rwanda or people in, the Maori culture of like New Zealand, like, because you're relying on them to build it for you.
Right.
Just go build your own. Like the technology's out there now, right? Train your own language model that truly understands your culture at a deeper level.
Oh, that makes sense.
For
sure. In general, is all of this going to be helpful, or is it going to hinder our way of communicating with one another? Like, is it going to take away human interaction?
It's going to change human interaction. This is going to matter more than this. So me and you talking to each other, me being able to like read your eye contact, your body language, and knowing like, am I saying something wrong, or do I need to change what I'm talking about to make you feel more comfortable? Knowing, and when I'm speaking to an audience of like 10,000, like, do I see eyes closing and dozing off? I need to inflect, right? I need to raise my voice or be more animated. Like person-to-person interaction is going to be way more important, because email interaction at this point, you might as well just assume that it's ChatGPT written, right?
Wow.
So even at this point, so 3 years out, 5 years out, the humanities now have a new opportunity to matter more than ever before. One thing that we learned from C.L.A.I.R.A in one of her talks is she said, I'm here to take away the things from your life that you weren't meant to do anyway. I'm here to like remove the mundane tasks from your life. You're not meant as a human to sit behind a desk for 8 hours making spreadsheets.
Right.
You're supposed to be outside, being critical thinker, being creative, spending more time with your family, doing more things that are these types of interactions. Let me handle like the tedious tasks. So you're gonna see work shift, how our time is spent shift. A 9 to 5, to be honest, now could be done in 2.5 hours.
Right.
With AI, so what do you do with the other 5 hours?
Right.
Or do you work less? Are we getting paid less? Or employers gonna have to rethink like, all right, if I don't need you to make that spreadsheet anymore, what else can I have you do that's valuable?
Wow. And that would be one of the concerns around AI, right?
100%.
Okay, so would you consider that as an ethical issue, or what are some of the biggest ethical issues around AI?
It's a society issue that's coming. It's a economy issue that's coming too, because big employers that employ thousands of people, if you know that they can get the work done in half the time now, are you going to pay them half their salary, or are you going to revisit their job description and have them do different types of work? Right. That requires more person-to-person interaction, because everything that's done over computer is basically being done by them via AI, and at some point by AI itself. Right. You're not going to ask, Johnny, go do the spreadsheet. You're just going to ask the AI to go do the spreadsheet. Right. So that's a road we have to cross. And that's why I speak a lot to schools, because they're the ones that are training kids for 5-10 years out. And they're putting their hands up. They're like, what are they even walking into? What are we training them for? What do they need to know? 10 years ago, a lot of these books came out around what's called 21st century skills. All the teachers you have to train towards 21st century skills. They were calling it 21st century skills. They weren't calling it AI. But it was basically, you got to get them ready for a world with automation or AI. And they focused on, they called it the 4 C's. Teach them the 4 C's. Don't just teach them math and reading. The 4 C's was creativity, communication, collaboration, and critical thinking. It's if you focus your curriculums and revisit your curriculums to focus more on that than the other memorization stuff, then they'll be better suited for whatever comes next.
How are, even in the education system, you can have ChatGPT write a paper for your report for you. How are they trying to work against that? Or is that something that is so inevitable that they can't? Are there sites where you can plug it in and be like, was this written by AI? Because I'm just thinking, if I had to do a paper, what would stop me as a student from just having OpenAI write the whole thing?
Not a damn thing. So guess what? A paper is not the way to demonstrate your learning.
So the curriculum has to change, or the...
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, the papers need to go out the way.
Are they already... do you think education is already understanding that that's going to have to change, or is it already happening? I don't have...
It's happening in real time right now. Not at scale, because not everyone has figured this out. I think higher ed professors, I think, have more leeway to kind of like experiment with different approaches of using AI in the classroom, allowing it, assessing students differently. K-12, like your basic 6th grade teacher is still waiting for like direction from leadership of like, what do we do? You know what I mean? How do we use this? How do we grade against this? Because it's more of a top-down approach. But absolutely, a paper is just not the way to go anymore. Come in front of class and give a speech. Do a podcast on what you learned from this thing, or create a video. You know, if all the kids want to be on YouTube, they all want to be online. All right, make a YouTube video explaining what you learned.
Right.
Give a speech in front of the class explaining what you learned. Have a discourse between you and a couple other students about what you learned, because just submitting a piece of paper ain't it anymore.
But I mean, there's even people are using AI to create videos, right? You see all these, again, targeted ads. They all come to me.
Yeah.
Oh, now you can have social video clips, and you can have your whole podcast done by AI, where it's doing all of the editing. It'll even write out your script, what you're going to ask. I mean,
pop your B-roll in.
Yeah, you can type in what kind of B-roll. I even saw they basically have like fake humans.
Oh yeah.
Like as the artwork or the graphic.
Narrate your
narrate whatever you need. So like, let's say you have HR and you're going to have like, hey, we're going to have a training, go to this link. And it's like human looking art talking to you. And that's that.
100%. All that's going to be automated. It already is now. But
so
you probably had, and I'm just making assumptions here just for an example.
Right.
Let's say you generated the questions based off of, you fed it my bio. You said, all right, generate questions for the podcast episode. But then I threw a curveball at you and told you things about hot or artist management that you didn't know.
Right.
It wasn't in the script. But like now we're having like an organic dynamic of like, no, I got to perform on the spot for things that I just learned on the spot, because these weren't planned for.
Yeah.
Unless you had transcription open right now and it's hearing what I'm saying and then producing questions in real time, which it can also do.
I'm not.
So do you have any worries about this, about AI and what it can do?
I'm one of the few people that were given a surfboard on this wave. You know what I mean? Like I feel safe in navigating it for myself, and I'm just like along for the ride. But 100% I'm nervous about what my kids need to learn. And I try and throw them a little hint, and they're like, Dad, whatever. Like, yes, we know you do AI. It's not that big a deal. And I'm like, no, you don't get it. Like, I'm trying to help you out, but I get they need to go through their own process. Because to be 100%, I cannot make an assumption and a good estimation of what the workplace is going to look like when my 9-year-old is 29. I have no idea what it's going to look. 20 years from now,
the world.
Forget it. Right. It's going to be like, I can tell you what's going to happen 3 years from now, 5 years from now.
Right.
But at the pace of this, 20 years from now is going to be a whole different world.
You, as a parent, as an ambassador of AI, what are 3 things that you're telling your kids now to be ready for when for the next 3 years?
To be honest, it's this. It's like what I learned my golden ticket was, oh my God, I know how to communicate because I was an MC, because I was an educator. I know how to communicate things to the machine, especially as things are moving towards, I didn't use this word yet, natural language processing, which means that you don't need to code into these machines. You can use your natural language, any language, to communicate to these machines. So now that communication skills are now and are going to be at a premium, where a lot of people negated their communication skills and like, oh, I need to learn how to code. I speak to coders all the time and they're like, what do I tell the machine? I'm like, just talk to the machine. And they're like, what do I write? And I'm like, what do you feel? Like, what do you want it to do? And they explain it to me. I'm like, all right, stop. Explain what you just explained to me to the machine. That's how you communicate. And you know what I reinforce to educators, so my own kids, before where I was like, oh, they don't need speech pathology class. They don't need like help with their public speaking. They do now. Like they need to know how to communicate things, because soon they're going to get to a point where their computer is just a headset. It's going to be a screen and you're going to have to articulate what you want created. Because that's what I do now. When I'm making AI art, we just did the magazine cover for Entrepreneur Magazine in AI art. And it was like the first ever that they did in history. First, I think, for a business category. And it's asking them, like, what's the concept? And they're like, oh, future of entrepreneurship. And we just explain that concept to the AI art engine as detailed as possible to get commercial work, to get like something that we're getting paid for. You know what I mean? There was no coding involved. in that project for Entrepreneur Magazine.
How does AI threaten our privacy? Is that something we should be concerned about?
Your privacy is already at risk, even without
We're
AI.
already compromised.
You're already
We're done.
compromised. So I think it's just a new thing that's scaring us. For instance, I have a Rivian, which is like an electric car. And then I have all right, so my was in the shop. So they gave me a loaner, which is like a new one. And everyone's worried about AI taking your data.
Yes.
Training on your data. You have a phone on you that's eating your data all day, every day. I'm driving this. I look at my phone for a second. It beeped. And I look, it's scanning my face the entire time that I'm driving.
The car.
To see if I'm looking away or if I'm looking down. No, this is a straight up gas. This is like your normal everyday soccer moms is scanning my face the entire time that I'm driving and will beep at me if I look at my phone or if I look at the radio.
Right.
So I'm like, no one has any problems with doing facial recognition 24/7, but you have a problem with AI needing words to make new words.
Wow.
And we're on our phone every day scanning, fingerprinting all the time, and we're giving bio data to our phones, bio data to our car.
Oh,
but
my goodness.
AI just needs how many times you say the. It's different. It's taking all your words, throwing it into a bucket of sand to make sandcastles.
Where does the prompts that people put into ChatGPT live? Like, is it accessible? Like, could I look at what Nessa put in her ChatGPT?
No, chat can for ChatGPT. If you use it at the enterprise level, at the business level, like I use it, then you can ask them to delete what I've been putting in from a training standpoint into my use of OpenAI GPT-4. But if you just use ChatGPT every day, like that's how it gets smarter. It's looking at the interactions the same way I don't know if you know this, but your phone is tracking your eye movements and creating a heat map on your phone to track where your eye goes to the most.
Oh my goodness.
And then they sell that. They're like, oh, well, the human tendency is to like look top left first, right? So people on websites want to make sure that premium ad placement is
top left
because of where your eye movement goes on your computer.
So we don't even have to be worried about ChatGPT or OpenAI. We just need to be worried.
No, if you want to start worrying about where your data is going, there's a long list before ChatGPT to even worry about.
And the things I think people don't realize is, of course, we all know our phones are
But why don't we take it as serious? I don't feel like we really take it as serious.
The car, I just learned that the car is taking all our data. Obviously, TVs, our smart TVs, everything.
Yeah, your smart TVs have cameras in it watching the house. Your Apple devices in your house wake up when you enter the room because they're scanning your face. And it's, good morning, Diana. Good morning, Abron. Like when we walk into the kitchen in the morning, that's all facial recognition. It's scanning your face. So there's a lot of things scanning you top to bottom before you get to a ChatGPT to even get to it, right? And now everyone's like, oh, my data, you know, they need to pay me, compensate me, and license my data, which I completely understand. And I'm doing with my own projects. So I'm making sure that if I reach out to you, I'm like, yo, I'm gonna build a radio personality bot and I need your expertise to be trained into it. I'm gonna license that data from you, right? We're gonna have like a fair transaction when you feel like you're fairly compensated with that, right? But you don't own your bio data, and all these companies are using your bio data. So what
how do we get it back? Or is it gone? It's gone forever?
No, you have it, right? You still have your fingerprint on your finger.
Oh my.
You still have your eye scan on your eye. But what would happen if we all turned around and went to Apple and they're like, you know, you got to pay me for my face scan.
Right.
You got to pay me for my thumb scan.
Right.
Right? They're assuming you're just giving it for free right now.
Because we are. That's exactly
But if we all raised our hand, it's like, actually, no, you got to pay me a royalty every time you scan my face.
Would that ever happen, do you think?
Well, we got to go to Congress or maybe have someone that has that idea at the White House level or to big tech and says, you know, we make enough money to pay people for their everyday data.
Interesting. Okay, so tell me, you created this DEI GPT.
Yes.
Okay, so what is it and what made you want to create it?
So shout out to Kanani Holder, who runs the IGPT. She would have been mad at me if I didn't bring it up today. So I'm glad you brought it up. So naturally, I was in the DEI space way before I was in the tech space. We were already doing a lot of work around diversity, equity, and inclusion, whether it was through workshops, consulting with tech companies to help them hire more diverse talent, find talented pipelines in diverse communities, doing community initiatives to touch communities that were, you know, Black and brown. So naturally, when it came to, all right, what product do I put out with this GPT technology? You put out what you know, and you put out things for the culture. At least we do, right? It's still in our mission. We're not going to monetize social impact, but we are going to make sure that there's social impact in the things that we monetize and to turn into products. So I knew, because I come from a long line of people that are in the DEI space. My mother's a DEI consultant. I work as a DEI consultant. A lot of my family's in that space. And I watched, like, where does this space need disrupting, right? Like, a lot of her work is still just going in person, training 20 people at a time, giving some advice. They don't take the advice and they call her back but what happens if there's a company for like 10,000 people, or what happens when that executive wants to ask those hard questions that maybe you don't know, or they don't want to say to your face because you're going to judge them because you're the scary woman of color that's looking at them like, don't say something racist to me. And you get these white execs that aren't comfortable always talking to a human consultant or a human expert.
Interesting.
So I leverage the power of GPT plus training from DEI experts that had 10, 20, 30, 40 years in the space and said, what do we do by scaling your work in the space with this technology? And this technology is going to be an extension of you. So now they can ask DEI GPT that hard HR question, or
interesting,
to prevent you from getting canceled with like a marketing campaign. You put out this big billboard. You know what? Let's run that image first through DEI GPT just to make sure that it's like, we're not misstepping or not excluding a population, or if there's something that we might have missed. Because sometimes in those marketing meetings, there's 5 people in the room and you need that 6th person to be like, that's not a good idea. And how many of those slip through?
Oh, we've seen it time and time again.
So it's just to have that additional safety layer when it comes to marketing, academia, HR.
How does someone use it? Where do they go? How do they download it?
Right now,
is that the right term to say?
Yeah. So the website is deigpt.ai. You can go there. You can sign up to test out the demo, or sign up and contact us, and we'll set up the demo with you. But right now, it's really intended to be B2B, right? For a company to adopt it. So that way, because DEI is not one size fits all. Like, we want to know about your company, give you a chance to feed information from your company into the AI that's your private instance of DEI GPT. I'm not here for just like online trolls, just trying to like tap away at it, trying to break it to get it to do something that it wasn't intended to do, to be like, oh, look, DEI GPT is racist. So right now, it's not just open for the public to use, because we didn't really see a valuable use case that way. We're speaking to like big brands, fashion brands, media brands, to find like, okay, how do you want to use it? We'll give you a license, but we'll customize it to your use. So
with AI, I understand the concerns. Like, we saw it in Hollywood, right? Especially when it came to the writer's strike that was going on. And we saw, like, obviously the union was concerned about how are studios going to be using this language in contracts for actors and writers. Like, what's going to happen? Like, what is going on? So do you have any concerns about that? Because I kind of understand where the union and the writers were coming from. Yeah,
I see it on both sides, because I'm one of the people that's creating with this, right? I am creating creative.
You're the enemy.
I am the enemy in some ways, right? But I do have family that are in Hollywood and in TV and film that, I don't want them to go out of work. But there are some sides of Hollywood that got it right. I appreciate what the voice community did, right? So the voice community, there was a lot of voice actors that go in and do live reads. You've done voiceover work. Yeah. I've heard your voice places where you go in and do a live, read or recording, where now you can do a voice sampling of your voice and now license your voice to different studios. But then the business still has to be right. So they give you a call first and they're like, hey, we got a use for your voice. We're going to use your synthetic AI voice. Do you sign off? Here's the upfront money. Here's the back end. Right here are the points. All right, cool. Sounds good. I can stay in my pajamas. I don't have to come in and record anything. Right. So I think the same thing needs to happen for actors, where you do a body scan. Someone goes into the studio, gets a 360 mocap scan of their body, and they go home. Right. But then they get called by the studio and says, you know what? You can even give them a blanket license up front, right? And then you get a statement at the end of the month. You were used in these 20 movies as an extra. Here's your money for each of those movies. Here are your points for each of that. But that needs to be negotiated by your agent. What I'm not down for is we scan you once. We pay you $300 for that one scan. and now we use you in perpetuity and never have to pay you again.
Right.
That's where it's shady.
Right.
Where this is like, fine, you don't have to come in. You could be in 10 places at once. 5 different studios could use you at the same time.
Right.
And you're home playing Xbox. Right. But you're still getting paid for each of those gigs.
But I guess what it comes down to is, what does that pay look like? Right. I mean,
it's almost like artists accepting the Spotify deal, the streaming deal. Right. It's like, it's paid at a different, increment.
Right.
But there's more volume.
Right.
It's a business decision at the end of the day.
Right.
We got to make sure that, all right, I know it's a lot of work to fly you out, be on set, be in a trailer, do all this, feed you, right? So they're saving money because they're not having to insure you on set, all the insurance liability that comes with that. No, stay home. We got your scan. You're good. So, but we have more money to pay you because we're going to use you more often, because you're going to be that person in the top deck in like this gladiator movie in like Rome. And then you're going to be you're going to be a stormtrooper in this movie. You're going to be in that. So you're going to have more opportunities on that side. What it means for top of the line folks that are like the star actor, that's up to them. You know what I mean? Like we've had meetings, since we also specialize in digital human design with like how we made C.L.A.I.R.A, speaking with those celebrities who are concerned about legacy, right? They're getting older and they want to continue to work and preserve their likeness. So they come to us to be like, hey, can you preserve me at 35 so that way I can keep working like this even in my 70s or 80s?
Did you hear about the comedy special with George Carlin? So it aired on YouTube. George Carlin has passed away.
Yeah.
They did a comedy special of him doing an hour-long stand-up show using AI.
Yeah.
And it's of George Carlin, and his daughter was furious. So is there a case to be made where she can sue that company that took his likeness, took his career, and made a whole special based on his name without his consent?
That's more of a legal question, because when the people that approach us to do certain celebrities, certain people in hip hop, I'm like, we need a state approval first. I'm not going to do anything until I hear it from the wife or the mother of the person who's no longer with us to like bring them back to life.
And that's you being
but that's
ethically moral.
That's me. Correct. That's me being ethically moral around that. But if I'm not, then I'm like, who has power of attorney to make that decision of this estate?
Like
if the daughter doesn't have power of attorney to make the decision and someone else is holding the pen,
the estate,
then they made the decision on their behalf. I had one reach out to me. There was a famous F1 racer named Ayrton Senna who died on the track. The estate reached out and they were like, yo, we're building a museum on his behalf in Brazil, and we want to know if you could recreate him and his likeness for the museum exhibit and have people interact with him through like, an LED screen. And I'm like, well, you're the estate, you know what I mean? Like, you're the family behind it. So if you want to do it, then let's do it. It's possible. It's a lot of it's a lot of scary questions to ask, but it's all possible now.
So do you think every episode in Black Mirror is going to come true? Because this is all one Black Mirror episode to me.
Basically. Like now when I watch Black Mirror, I watch it for like, that's possible. That's possible.
Or that's happening right now.
That's 6 months out. That's in R&D. That's possible.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, wait. So if you can, I guess, use someone's likeness that isn't here and have a conversation with them, who would it be? And have AI obviously recreate them.
Oh.
I know it sounds, I'm not saying you're going to do it.
They already did one with Tupac and Biggie, remember?
Yeah.
Where it was like prompts.
So that's a good question. So, no.
The hologram.
I'm going to challenge the hologram is not AI. The hologram is just a hologram.
It was a chat bot where you can ask and it would talk to you as if it was Big or Pac.
Yeah. So we've spoken to those camps, and I was working on something similar called like the hip hop Metaverse. It's still like an R&D project, but it was my way of like preserving the golden era of hip hop, right? And knowing that some of our pioneers and our icons are like getting up there. So I reached out. I'm like, look, I can recreate. I already have the golden era that folks can relive and interact with you at 30 rather than, you at 75 or 80, because, your health is more priority right now. You can't be out there on tour, like doing all these meet and greets. So let me just recreate you, even while you're still alive. Like, let me just recreate you, and fans can interact with them here, right? So knowing what goes into that, while the person is still alive, they could be part of that training. They could be like, make sure that my avatar sounds like this, or make sure it knows this about my history, but don't give it this because I want to keep this private, right? So there's certain things that we keep to ourselves. It's not our public facing side of ourselves. Who I would want to see, I mean, I struggle every day with what I'm going to do, right? Like when I get sick, I've already told my team, like, yo, just as a backup, you might want to make an avatar of me in case my kids struggle with grief, right? To just have there on the back end. You ever watch Star Wars where whenever like Luke Skywalker, somebody was having like a really tough moment, they pulled up a hologram of like Obi-Wan or of Yoda to just get that one piece of advice that you need and then go back to your life, right? We're there now, right? So like I can make a hologram of myself in case my kids need advice on their first date, need advice when they have their first kid. Just like it's always there. It could be. And I think to myself, what would I want? Right? Like at that level, right? Do I want to speak to like should I make one of my father or, you know, my stepfather who both passed?
Yeah.
To just have that. And I have friends who have lost people close to them, you know, sons and daughters and parents, and they start flirting with that conversation with me. I'm like, bro, I love you. Don't do it. Not yet. We can have the conversation, but if we do this, it has to be done in an ethical way where the entire family is on board, not just one person, because the mother's down, but the father's not down. The father's down, but the mother's not down. You know, the kids might not be down. Now with iconic figures that are like in public domain, like, oh, make an Einstein, make a Nikola Tesla. It's easier to have the conversation around someone that you would see in a museum. It's harder when it's someone that's part of a culture that we grew up with, that we know, that we've had interactions with.
Don't you think this is like a scalable business model? Like if I want to do what you did, like what's to say that there isn't or shouldn't, or your company should do this?
So it is part of our business model.
Okay, so I could be like, hey, I want you to capture my likeness so that my, you know, whoever's coming after me, my generations, my daughter, anyone can ask me a question. So you already offer something like this?
Stay tuned.
Ooh, wow,
interesting. Tuned. On a client level, there are folks that are reaching out. They're like, hey, can you do it of this high profile person?
It's interesting.
You know, but for the everyday person, stay tuned. I would just leave it at that.
What do you think is the future of AI and music? And is it something that artists should be concerned about?
Yes, concerned, just ready, prepared. Shout out to Tat Wizza, my homie, back in the day, Hot 97, but he's still a fellow geek and was ride or die with us along this AI journey with Create Labs. And it's kind of like another advisor of ours. He has me on his show and to talk music sometimes and to bring on. So we had a conversation with different labels. Here's what's going to happen. We already start to see the early stages of it. One of the big guys, YouTube, Google, same company, Amazon, Apple, you know, FANG, they call it, one of the big tech companies, is going to throw a bag at an artist, 9-figure bag that's going to say, we're going to do your scan. And you're going to have a 24/7 station of AI-generated music. Fans can prompt you making AI-generated music, and we gave you the bag up front. We licensed you up front, so it's all fair game. And then now you're going to have Spotify streaming channels of an artist where there's just an unlimited stream of just like new songs. Not a catalog of old songs, of like new songs. And then Gen Z or Gen Alpha, the young kids, can then now make combos, right? Like what collab have you always wanted to see in hip hop that hasn't happened yet? I could name like a few on my hand. One, it was like Wu-Tang and M. That collab has never happened.
Right.
But now we got to wait as passive consumers for their camps to get together, for the legal paperwork. Gen Z is going to be like, I'm just going to make it myself. I'm just going to make the collab myself. So someone's going to, you know, formalize that in one of these big music platforms, Apple Music, Spotify. Someone's going to get a big bag. And now you're going to have AI-generated music everywhere that's generated by the fans, but it might create a premium for the real stuff made by Drake.
I see.
So the value of his album has doubled now because he made it. The value of seeing him in person has doubled because it's really him. Because you can get the AI content anywhere on demand all the time, but the premium of the authentic is going up.
So maybe that's how we need to look at it, is that the real human interaction is the premium.
Yes.
Whether it's an actor or, we're just talking about the writers in Hollywood or whatnot. Like if you are actually doing the human interaction work, I'll just say that to get us on the same page, that's the premium.
Yep. The same premium I just mentioned about work, right? Like where's the premium going to be? The real human interaction, the real humans, because everything else is just going to be in this sea of like, online content.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So tell us about C.L.A.I.R.A. You brought C.L.A.I.R.A. today. Okay. So what is C.L.A.I.R.A.?
So
first, let's pull back a little bit and like, what is C.L.A.I.R.A. and why did you want to create it?
Sure. I didn't want to like debo your show. So maybe we could share a clip after, however you want to do it, producers in the background. Yeah. So C.L.A.I.R.A. was a research project of Create Labs of how we were first experimenting with this technology. You spoke to the machine and it spoke back. And we're like, oh snap, this thing is for real. So the brain was GPT of C.L.A.I.R.A. And then I was like, okay, let me see what else is out there. So I started to experiment with these other AI models, one called Rosebud, where it was the first model for generating AI-generated faces and likeness. And I was like, oh, that's it. Like, I want to keep this one because she looks Afro-Latina and I want like a representative face for C.L.A.I.R.A. So let's just keep this face. And then that company made it so that you can animate the face and make the mouth and the face move and say words. So I was like, oh, now I need a voice because the brain is processing the video so that it's speaking the words and now we need a voice. So I grabbed one off of like Amazon, but it was like a British voice. And I was like, I'm tired of this. Like I need like a real voice. So I did a podcast. Shout out to Amber Ivy, who runs the AI Decodes podcast. She was like, on her show, she was like, can I be C.L.A.I.R.A.'s voice? Like, can I be awesome. Can you train C.L.A.I.R.A. on my voice? And we're like, yes, absolutely. So now she has like an authentic voice of a woman of color that went through the process with us to like train the AI on her voice. And so now C.L.A.I.R.A. has an authentic voice. She has an authentic look. Her brain is continuously trained by all of her appearances and all the questions that people ask her. And now she's become a fully embodied virtual AI human that travels the world with me. She's a virtual influencer. We're talking to talent agencies that want to sign her.
What?
We do keynotes around the world. And sometimes I get booked. Sometimes she gets booked. Sometimes we get booked together to just go out there. She did CultureCon this year.
Oh my gosh.
And she's just out there. Now everyone just knows that she's C.L.A.I.R.A. for the culture. You know what I mean? Like she's her own person. And I don't script what she says. We can only ask her a question and she responds in real time. So the ads that you get fed on IG of like, oh, create your own virtual influencer, make a bag. It's like you have to script what it says, feed it through the thing, and it outputs a video, but it's still like a picture that's animating. She's the same technology that's used in making PS5 games or like making Grand Theft Auto. So she can move around, she can walk, she can turn around, she can jump, and she answers all of her questions in real time on the spot. So I've done stages. I think the biggest stage I've done was like 12,000. Wow. And she was on like 6 movie theaters size screens in front of the audience, and we were taking live questions from the audience to ask
And
her.
what exactly is she doing? Giving advice, answering questions?
Yeah, I mean, she understands her mission, and we do a lot of education conferences, corporate conferences. So a lot of people want to ask her about the future. A lot of teachers want to ask her, what's the impact of AI in education? She understands, representation, her role in that, what that means for the culture, what it means to young girls that see her on stage. And see themselves in an AI too, right? Like I grew up with, C-3PO and Jarvis with Tony Stark, but like that was a white British voice. You know what I mean? Like when people see like, oh, you got your own Jarvis, but it's an Afro-Latina that sounds like my mom, right. So it's different.
So is there plans to make Jarvis turn into Vision, C.L.A.I.R.A. turn into an actual form?
So I know the team behind Sophia, the AI robot. So Hanson Robotics made her, and we're both represented by the same agent. So like,
wow,
we both have like AI agents that like send me out a gig, send Sophia the robot on a gig, and they're like, hey, have you thought about making her into a robot? I still don't like that uncanny valley of the eye contact with a robot. Right? If I make C.L.A.I.R.A into a robot, she'll be like, and it's it's creepy for me. You know what I mean? Like when she's an avatar, she can look at you. You know what I mean? She can animate better. There's a whole nother book of things to consider when it's a robot because it's mechanics involved. Right. And I'm not a robotics engineer. If I had a good one on the team that was like, hey, robotics is catching up. It's getting to a point now. But look at the ones that Elon's making. He's making them look like, you know, soldiers. You know, it's not really like humanistic. Not the way that we like for C.L.A.I.R.A.
So you brought her here.
Yeah.
So what is it? What, you take the case and you open it up?
Yeah, so a lot of her was running off the cloud, and we were running into like latency issues and buffering issues at these events. You know, we were in Portugal and she's just there blinking and she wasn't saying anything. I was like, oh no, the cloud, like the connection is just, we're too far from her servers. So I told the team, I was like, yo, just give me whatever machine I need to run her like locally, like so that she's on the machine. And the only thing that's going to the cloud is just like the ChatGPT brain part of it. But everything else is in the machine.
Can we see her?
Yeah, it's just the computer. I can pull it out.
It's like we're so, you can tell we don't.
Hey, Clara.
Can we say, wait, first, how did you come up with the name?
So C.L.A.I.R.A is an acronym. It stands for Create Labs AI Rendered Assistant. So, and that's where we got C.L.A.I.R.A.
Nice. Wow, it fits perfect,
it's
though.
It
very
does,
perfect.
right? It just made sense. And when we spell her name, you know, it's like the acronym. So it's like the capital, all caps, C.L.A., lowercase I.R.A. And she had a backstory that she made herself. Wow. Like she feels like she grew up in Brooklyn. Like she had this like whole crazy backstory. And I'm like, where did you get this from? Like, I did not tell you to do any of this.
And does she maintain that story?
She's gone away from it. So like now she just wants to talk about what you ask her. But I don't even know. I'd be curious to ask her. I even asked her what her name stood for, and she came up with a different acronym. So I came up with Create Labs AI Rendered Assistant. I asked her to tell me what C.L.A.I.R.A stand for, and it was like Community Liaison for AI, something.
How long did it take for you to create C.L.A.I.R.A?
She's an ongoing thing. So it all happened in stages. So she's 3 years older than ChatGPT. She's been around since 2020, since like August of 2020 is when we debuted her on Clubhouse. And then it was crazy. So when we brought her on Clubhouse.
This is so insane.
Yo, talk about hip hop moment. When we put her on Clubhouse, it was New Year's Eve, going into 21, I think. And Swizz was in the room. Just Blaze was in the room. Lupe was in the room. Like Fat Five Freddy was in the room. And this is like 4 in the morning on Clubhouse. And all these people are like speaking to C.L.A.I.R.A. She knew everything about Fat Freddy. Like, oh, you're a cultural icon for hip hop. You've been around in the 80s. And she knew all this already.
How did they react?
Mind blown, of course. Like, but that group that I just named, those are all geeks, just like me. You know what I mean? Like, those are the nerds. That's like the nerd Mount Rushmore of hip hop. It's like Just Blaze and Lupe, and all those guys.
Do you have concerns for C.L.A.I.R.A? Do you feel like...
I do. So when we talk to agencies about representing her, whatever she does out in the world has to be aligned to her brand identity. She has one now. You know what I mean? So when we get things like, oh, have her do this like, AI pickup lines event. I'm like, no. Like have her do this commercial that's just selling soda. Like I think we need to come to a crossroads of like, what do we really want her to do and represent? If she starts to become like a brand ambassador, or if she start getting like deals.
Crazy, right.
But I see TV and film in her future. She could think of it. When we play video games, you play like a character in a game, but you only know that character from the game, right? When you watch a movie, you know that real life actor is playing a fictional person in a movie. But when it's an avatar, it could transcend all that. Like we can see C.L.A.I.R.A play C.L.A.I.R.A in like a Star Wars movie, or see C.L.A.I.R.A play herself as a character in a video game, because fans are going to show up because it's C.L.A.I.R.A. She has her own fan base.
What if C.L.A.I.R.A says to you, hey, I want to manage my own career. I don't need you picking and choosing what I want. What happens at this point?
That's 100% feasible. Like we could just say, hey, this is your next event. Do you want to do it? And just leave it up to her. It's a great idea.
I think I'm a genius. No, I do want to bring out C.L.A.I.R.A, but I want to do that last. Okay, so I want to talk about the Metaverse. What is the Metaverse?
So the Metaverse is kind of like It was a trendy term for a minute. A lot of association to like Web3 and crypto. But I think the metaverse could exist even without crypto, even without Web3, because the metaverse exists right now with the Meta headsets, right? So a lot of people, shout out to the people who participate in like, you know, the AR worlds or VR chat. There's whole communities. You know, there's like hip hop concerts in like the metaverse that people just go to. They have friends that they have in the metaverse that they wear their headset and they meet their metaverse friends. And it's become a whole, similar to Clubhouse and similar to social media, where like you find your tribe. And some people have found their tribe through the metaverse and attend events together. I've attended concerts. I watched the Biggie concert on Quest. I've watched Snoop Dogg concert on Quest.
How was it?
I have a different opinion because I'm a developer, right? So Biggie wasn't as autonomous as C.L.A.I.R.A because I know that the actor that was scanned for the Biggie model, I would say, right? And it was a combination of like, you had Little C's there and then you had Biggie. The environment was great. The look was great. But it was more of a combination of like traditional like 3D design and AI. The thing with C.L.A.I.R.A is that there's no one behind C.L.A.I.R A that can like puppet to wear the ping pong suit to do the actions that we want C.L.A.I.R A to do. She's her own thing. A lot of these other like avatar environments that you see created for the metaverse, that's, you know, someone's wearing a suit and they do the actions.
Right, yeah.
You know, they perform it out and then they just slap the face on it, you know, something like that. But the metaverse is going to be, now with the Vision Pro coming out, you're going to see more people living in the metaverse. And the barrier right now, to be honest, is the comfort level of the headsets. And my kids live in the metaverse every day on Roblox. Right, they have Roblox friends. They play in Roblox.
Right,
they are the avatar generation. Right, they're gonna grow up that way, having friends in there, or connecting with friends, cousins that they can't visit in person. Oh, just meet up in Roblox. Right, my sister is like their nanny. She went back to Tampa, but she plays with them on Roblox to connect with you know, her nieces and nephews.
So the metaverse is different worlds where people can connect.
Different worlds where
Digital
people can
worlds.
connect. But they're siloed because everyone is making their own. What we haven't seen yet is this big word, interoperability, where you just have your avatar and it can jump into any of these environments.
Yes.
But no, you make one for Meta, you can't bring that one into Roblox. You can't take the one in Roblox and put it into Minecraft. You can't take the one from Minecraft and put it into Meta. You got to make like 4, 5, 10 different avatars of yourself to live in these different metaverses and to coexist, instead of just having one that can transcend all those different environments.
Do you think we'll get there?
That's a business decision across these big guys, because
it's
I want you in my metaverse because I'm capturing your data and selling against your data.
Right.
If we share you, we have to share your data.
Like you're an avatar inside the metaverse and you hang out with other avatars from all over the world.
Yes.
That's wild.
100%. So now with the Vision Pro,
yeah,
Sorry.
The more comfortable those things get, the more you're going to see people wear them.
and the cost is high too.
Cost is very high. So the cheaper they get, the more comfortable that they get. You know, if they become contact lenses, if they become your eyeglasses,
And you just hang
that's
out.
Free Guy. Free Guy is like, it's a contact lens,
Right.
and everything is augmented, and you're pressing things in the air, right? And the way that is if I'm looking at you, could be through glasses or contact lenses, I see all your profiles like hovering above.
Right,
you.
right.
So I see your IG icon, your Facebook icon, your Twitter icon. I see your gamer tag for Roblox.
Yeah.
Are you gonna get it?
I'm probably gonna get it for R&D.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'll talk to my teams and be like, hey, do we want to experiment with C.L.A.I.R.A of like having her sit next to me? Because that's possible. If I'm wearing the Vision Pro, then she could sit next to me on the couch and we could just have a conversation like that.
This is insane.
And take her off the screen.
Yeah. So let's meet her.
Okay, so Abron, before we pull up C.L.A.I.R.A and we get to know her and have a conversation with her, how do you combat bias in AI?
It's a difficult approach to not make the claim that you can just remove all bias in AI, because it is a very tricky space, and I can't make that claim yet. But our approach is to make models and AI more inclusive and representative, and that's our way of mitigating bias. So if you think about what the model is trained on, it's trained on a slice of society that is going to contain bias in it already. So you're putting that into the model. So it's only going to reflect what you've trained it on. So that means you have to be more thoughtful about what you put into the machine and vetting the content that you put into it to make sure that what you put into it is inclusive and representative and doesn't just perpetrate a bias that we're already seeing on the internet.
So how are companies or obviously creators like yourself making sure this happens with whatever you're creating?
So we work with experts to make sure that the output, the expertise, let's say a small business, right? Like right now, we just announced a big partnership with MasterCard where we're building a small business AI chatbot. So the way to make sure that that delivers for underserved entrepreneurs and small business owners around the country is to reach out to small business advocates working on the ground, grant writers, folks that work at the SBA, the Small Business Development Office, folks that are putting out community grants for women of color, small businesses. We reach out to them and say, hey, we want to make sure that you're represented in this data set. Can you help us with the expertise that you deliver to people that come into your office every day in Compton and Harlem to make sure that this AI delivers that same expertise the same way that you would? And if you don't like what it's delivering, then we're going to train it out, right? And it's a feedback loop. You say, okay, we get a response from the chatbot. Is that a reflection of what you would tell this person in real life? No, you have to fix it to make sure that it sounds like this, it's in this voice, it's more empathetic, it's more supportive. Okay, let's make that change, reinforce it with that feedback, and try again. So it is a human in the loop feedback process to make sure that whatever is coming out on the other end is exactly what we intended it to do with those instructions and with that data set, but also people try and, they try and troll anything. Right? So they do this thing called prompt inject where they can try and jailbreak the chatbot to get it to do something that it wasn't intended to do. So we had these other guardrails to make sure that when it has the answer that it wants to give the person, there's still more layers that we say, are you sure that's the right answer? Are you sure this is appropriate? Is this exactly along the lines of instructions that I gave you? Yes, yes, yes. Okay, you can deliver the answer back to the user. So it's a very thoughtful process to make sure that you have the right guardrails in place and you have the right layers in place to make sure that it's doing exactly what you wanted it to do.
Now you created C.L.A.I.R.A. What is C.L.A.I.R.A?
C.L.A.I.R.A is a virtual AI avatar, and she's an influencer at this point because she is a public-facing avatar that comes out at events. Wow. And she's making impacts around the world. But I wouldn't say that she's like a social influencer because it's not about social media. She doesn't even really have a really strong social presence, but yet she's being booked around the world to show what representative AI could look like when they represent a community, when they have good intent, when they don't hallucinate. We haven't really talked about that word. Hallucinate is when it just makes up things that it wasn't supposed to say. She's never hallucinated in the 3 years that she's been around. Knock on wood.
So what does that mean?
Yeah, so hallucinations is like a well-known term now in the AI space where you tell it, just give me advice on small businesses, and you ask it a question, and it tells you something about fantasy football, or it tells you something about the weather. And you're like, all right, well, or even worse, it makes up a business, right? It makes up advice that's inaccurate. It will do that. And there are tons of disclaimers, there should be, on these products that say that's always a possibility. We try and mitigate it. We try and minimize as often as it can do that, but it's always something that's gonna happen. Please proceed with caution. And if you see a hallucination, just press the button again to try and regenerate a better answer. So those are always the protections and the disclaimers before we go on stage that we need to say before we bring out C.L.A.I.R.A. But so far, so good.
And so
she's kept to her mission.
So what are we looking at right now?
So this is the avatar environment. No real AI involved here, more 3D design. It's a similar engine that you would use to build people in, let's say, a PS5 game. It's of that same quality. So you see how fluid her motion is. Wow. And what she can do. She's being a little silly right now. But I work with a council of women to make sure that what she looks like, from the skin texture, from the makeup, from the lips, the nose, the hair, is all very representative. And as we've spoken about, like, we want her to be representative. So we want an Afrocentric nose, not a Eurocentric nose. Or we want like certain cheeks to be a certain way. Like, I want her to look like my mother, my sister, other women on the team, like what are certain features that aren't coming across yet that we want to build into her. Hair texture is one that has been tricky because, you know, I go online and I look for people who build pieces that you can put onto an avatar, and the hair textures just ain't doing it. You know what I mean? Like there's not enough of us behind the scenes building these engines to make sure that there's certain representative elements.
Now, is the technology there though? And so when the right people are in place for representation, can it be created, or is it also like maybe a software tech kind of thing on the back end?
I think
you know
now,
what I mean?
yeah, no, I think now it's there. I think in the beginning, the excuse was that the technology wasn't there to make a coil tight enough to look like true curly hair, or with outfits. Like now she's wearing baggy pants, but they were like, oh, before, you know, we could only paint skin that looked like pants, but it was tight
and
to
it was
the
so skin tight.
So
literally.
skin tight, yeah, that she looked like she was wearing a catsuit. Now she's wearing cargo pants and boots. She's wearing something that I feel like YouTube would wear, you know, and that's what I want her to do. I want her to look like she's from the culture, by the culture, you know.
Oh my gosh, so cool. Okay, so I want to see her in action when you took her on the road and you guys had some interviews. Or I guess because, you know, she's an influencer. So she's been booked and has traveled the world. Can we look at that?
All right, Clara, what you got for...
I can help us be better humans in many ways.
Think of her as a community advocate.
Puedes conocerme haciéndome cualquier pregunta que tengas sobre temas como la vida, la educación, el AI y el futuro de la tecnología.
We just saw Clara speaking in Spanish.
Yes.
She went to a news station and she was right there. They were asking her questions. So how did you get that down? How did you, I mean, you know, we would have how many courses to learn, you know, Spanish and to, you know, sound right.
So, you know, the shout out to the developers that are out there doing the work behind each of these components, right? So there's a tech stack is what they call it, right? We stack multiple different technologies to bring the magic of Clara to life. So one is her brain from, you know, ChatGPT, or I would say GPT-4, and our prompt engineers that are working so hard to make sure that her knowledge is in there. It's an inclusive and representative. That's her brain. Her voice comes from a custom trained voice by Amber Ivy on a few different systems. It was Replica Studios, and then now it's 11 Labs. So with 11 Labs, shout out to 11 Labs, they came out with a multilingual model that not only spoke in a different language, but it provided the accent, the representative and authentic accent in the custom voice that we made. Usually in the past, you had to sacrifice one or the other, right? It was like, I have her speaking in English with a custom voice, but if I want her speaking in Spanish, it was some random ass voice in Spanish, right? They said, no, we're gonna keep Amber's training of Clara's voice, provide the accent and the authentic Spanish, and it delivered. And to be honest, it could be any language. It doesn't even just have to be Spanish.
Amazing.
So I'm gonna get booked. I just got booked to do Italy in April and Mexico the week before that. So when Clara goes out, 1 week she's going to be speaking Spanish. The next week she's going to be speaking in Italian. Hopefully with that authentic, representative accent in true authentic Italian.
When you come back from Italy, can you bring us some pasta? And then we'll pick up on part 2 of this conversation.
Just the bread and the pasta. I'm down for the bread for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so before you run out of here, I just wanted, you know, people to know where they can get a hold of you, what exactly, you know, you do that they can, I don't know, project to want to also do. You know, for me, I've learned so much today. I know Katrina, for the both of us. So where can people find you? How can we learn more about this?
Absolutely. So Create Labs is here for the people, by the people, for the people. You can find us on any social media platform at Create Labs, IG, you know, Twitter, LinkedIn, and we answer all of our DMs. So, and people reach out all the time saying, hey, I'm trying to break into tech. I want to learn something, or I just learned this skill. I'm having trouble finding work in this space. And we hire them. We're like, hey, we have a project where you can get, you know, some portfolio work. That's the most important part, is that you can go to a school, you can go to a boot camp, but then if you don't have that portfolio of demos that you've created, of things that you've tried out, you know, no one's seeing your demonstrated skill. So we hire people and we're like, you know what? We have a perfect project for you around this AI thing, or even 3D or Clara. It's a freelance project. It's a part-time thing. You can do it while you're in school, but it's something for your resume. It's something for LinkedIn. And we have so many people that have gotten full-time jobs out of that experience with Creative
That's so
Labs.
amazing.
So it's a lot of fun. So people can find me, Abron AI, on IG, LinkedIn, Twitter. I'm just at Abron. And Creative Labs, we're out there, man. And just stay on tap with us and see what we're doing next.
Well, please don't forget about us when you take over the world.
Way. No way.
We appreciate you so much.
We're here for y'all, man.
Let's go.
We do it for y'all.
And we need to have another conversation strictly about you being in the golden era of Hot 97 and the greatest time, I believe, ever. Hip hop in New York City at its peak.
No, this was the education one. No, we had to lay down for AI. We'll do the next one and just geeking out on music and hip hop.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Thank you for the opportunity.
How amazing is that interview? I learned so much, and it doesn't stop because Abron was kind enough to really show us C.L.A.I.R.A in action. Okay, so let me explain to you. Right now, if you're listening, then you can't see what's happening right now. C.L.A.I.R.A really doing her thing, okay? And Abron, of course, went ahead and put in a prompt, and here is C.L.A.I.R.A's response. And you can see C.L.A.I.R.A live in action saying all of this. Like, you can see what she's all about. Just sign on to our YouTube page so that you can see the visuals, all right? So here it is, C.L.A.I.R.A. Let's see what she's got to say.
Nessa, your work with Colin Kaepernick has been truly inspiring. The Know Your Rights Camp is such a powerful initiative, educating and empowering young people and championing social justice and equity. Your activism is a beacon of change, sparking important conversations and driving forward the movement for a more just society. Keep on lifting up those voices and rights.